Welcome to the Bleep Bulimia podcast with my intriguing guest, Benjamin, the Dream Wizard. Hi, everyone. I'm Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia, and I'm super excited this week to have Benjamin Davidson here. He is the Dream Wizard. So thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Absolutely. It's good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Absolutely. I was on Benjamin's podcast, and we talked about dreams, which is what I would like to discuss. It's amazing what he did for me, and I'm hoping that the listeners out there are going to learn more about it. But to start off with, I just really want to know a little bit more about you, Benjamin. Tell us about how you got into this, a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So I have a degree in psychology, just a Bachelor of Sciences. Never went any further than that. Thought someday I might get a master's and hang out a shingle, but just didn't turn out that way. And what that allowed me to do was get into emergency psychiatric inpatient care. So I'm in a hospital taking care of people in their worst condition, schizophrenia, bipolar, active suicidal ideation, dementia, folks in an emergency crisis. They need a place to stabilize, get assessed. So I did that for about 20 years. And unfortunately, it was very often full of folks who were involuntarily held for their own safety. And you do that as long as you can. And it always conflicted with my broadly libertarian perspective on, don't force anyone to do anything they don't want to do. It's tough when you get things like dementia, long story short. So anyway, I got tired of being a, mental health jailer, prison guard in a way, and I decided to get into something else. So when I was in school, just stumbled upon, I was taking a history and systems of psychology class, and the teacher said, okay, we've come to the period of history, early 1900s. We've got Freud and Jung, and they thought dreams were very important. Freud said dreams are the royal road to the subconscious. And, I think there's a reason that quote's stuck around. Long story short, the teacher said, I want you to find two dreams that can be your own. They can be a friend's, family member, doesn't matter. Just find one dream and look at it through a Freudian lens, and then look at a separate dream through the Jungian lens and try and tease out what the difference in their approach was in terms of how you understand the dream. So I did that for two separate dreams. And actually, if anyone's interested in the two dreams that I analyzed, I did that as my special episode 100. Most folks might not know that. Well, if they're meeting me for the first time here, you wouldn't know anything, but I don't remember my dreams. I sleep so deeply, is the way I phrase it, that they're not close enough to that liminal zone, or as Mary Arnold Forster said, she called it the borderland state, the borderland between unconscious and fully conscious. I don't have enough mental activity in that zone to then wake up and remember what I was thinking about in my sleep. So back to episode 100, these are one of the few dreams that I do remember, and specifically they stuck with me because I used them in this class. And I turned it in. I did one from the Freudian, one Jungian, and the teacher said, "This is great. You nailed it." I got like an A on that paper, one of my rare A's in classes in general. I'm not usually an A student, so that gave me wow. I mean, I just kind of intuitively grasped it. I'm like, it was easy to write those, and the teacher said I got it correct. So I've had a little bit of a fascination with it ever since then. Like the idea of there's something to dreams, to these thoughts we have when we're asleep. We're always trying to problem solve. The way I phrase it is, the lungs breathe, the heart beats, and the brain thinks, and it doesn't stop until the day we die. So if we can kind of tap into that, if there's enough things happening in that kind of liminal borderland state, we can observe ourselves thinking as a kind of a second, almost from a third person perspective, but definitely from a second person perspective, and more objectively assess our thoughts because we're just seeing them happen rather than actively engaging with them with our conscious intent. I think I was going somewhere with that. I just tend to ramble until I run out of things to say.
I love it. I love it.
I hope that answers your question. How did I get into this thing? And that kind of kicked it off. And then a couple years back, I started the YouTube channel, started publishing the books. And what are these? Is like, this isn't just hawking product to make money. It is, but it's a physical product of something I put a lot of time and energy into. And it's also my own personal master class in becoming a dream expert. You know, you got to do the work.
Wow.
You got to read everything that's ever come before. So I go back 2,000 years and up to at least the 1920s. That's about when copyright expires. And I'm reading all the masters, the most popular works of the time, specifically a lot of it in the late 17, early to late 1800s, leading up to, and this is all the works that Freud and Jung would have been familiar with in terms of developing their theories. So, you know, and then my next project will have to be getting into more current research and say, okay, what's been done since the 1920s? And that'll be its own research project. And maybe someday I'll be a real wizard. So,
You already are to me
oh,
in my
thank
mind.
you.
So I
Thank
just
you.
want to say to the listeners who we're speaking to, how many books are you showing? And this is also
Oh, yeah.
on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it. But for the listeners, yeah, how many books do you have there?
Very cool. This is the current stack of all the physical copies I have. It's 15 books, and the 16th just got published, and that is Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson. And each one of these is unique. It's by a historical, I call it historical dream literature, because it is, in my estimation, truly literature. The most recent book by Hutchinson, he was an amateur golfer that wrote a lot of books and articles and stuff on sports. And he's considered today the father of modern golf instruction. Like if you go and learn from a pro at the course, he's probably using some methods developed by Hutchinson back in the day for how to teach people to golf well. Long story short on that, he went from a writer on sports, he came across dreams, and he wrote a tentative essay he published in a magazine in the late 1800s, early 1900s, somewhere around there. And he invited his readership to send their dream experiences. So, and then he wrote a book based on that correspondence with his readership, talking about the classes of their dreams, how they describe them, their experience with it. So it's just like I'm talking to people, bring me your dreams and we'll talk about them. And that's helping me develop my theory of what dreams are, how they work, how to get an understanding from them. So yeah, and there's some of them that I'm really proud of is the second one, The Mystery of Dreams. I did a lot of, so this is a preacher's sermon from the early 1600s. I did a lot of Latin translation for that. And it's probably, if anyone out there is a true Latin or biblical scholar, please feel free to critique the book. I'd love to do a second edition that is even better. I think I did a lot of work on it. So I'm very proud of that one. And that's so explicitly from a Christian perspective. And I started with these two on purpose. So the Court of Curiosity, book one in the ABC series, I call it, the ABCs of dream interpretation. This one had a very dream dictionary popular approach to, if you dream of this, it means something specific. And that was for a French knight wrote a letter to a noble woman of his day and educated her about, here's what the ancients have said throughout the years. So this is my first work to kind of get the ball rolling, and then explicitly from a Christian perspective. And then I jumped into a series of books I call my Oniro Chronologia series. I've got 3 volumes of those. And Oniro Chronologia is it's basically the study of dream interpretation over time. And it's an anthology set where it takes shorter works and puts them together. Like I couldn't even make, this book's pretty thin, it's a couple hundred pages. The other ones, I could maybe get 100 or 80 pages out of them. So I put them together in an anthology so people could get something tangible, a real thick book. And those are like, well over 400 pages each. So these are not insubstantial works, and I haven't even run out of material to publish. I got another 4 or 5 books coming, and then maybe start on some original works. I've got a plan for a new series called A Wizard's Guide to XYZ. So it'll kind of almost be kind of like an idiot's guide or books for dummies. Hopefully it'll be something in those veins. And that actually, I'm really excited about that project too, because I've got my own ideas, like for the first one, and well, I've got 3 or 4 possibilities of different books I would write. But I was talking to another guy, another one of my recent guest streamers, and he's a math teacher, and I'm like, let's do a Wizard's Guide to Math. You write it, I'll publish it under my, I'll do the editing and publishing. And you can be a math teacher just making simple concepts understandable and applicable to daily life in that way. And maybe we got I don't know. It might become something. We'll see.
Right? The next books for dummy, the next are Chicken Soup for the Soul, the next,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
I
those were
think it's
very popular,
wonderful.
at least something in that
Make
vein
sure
where
you
people,
copyright that right away, though. Copyright it now.
oh yeah, I don't even know how to do that, but yeah, we'll see
Oh,
if
online. You just do it
someone comes out
online.
with it. Gonna go to the patent office or something.
Yeah. Well, first the copyright, because then you can prove somebody stole it.
That's true.
Um,
Maybe I shouldn't mention
so
it anymore.
I
I
do
tell
that. In
everybody.
fact, I have 3 books I haven't written yet, but I copyrighted the title.
Okay, yeah,
Something worthwhile thinking about. So
yes,
I want to move into this, and people are going to say, well, why do you have like somebody who does dream interpretation on this podcast? Well, first of all, it's interesting. So I don't have to be speaking all the time about eating disorders or bulimia.
sure.
But in this particular case, it worked out because Benjamin, remember I was speaking to you while I was bulimic. My dreams were very different than now that I'm recovered, and I recovered 12 years, February. I'm pretty excited. Uh,
Congratulations.
thank you. And they were very like black and white, like it was watching a black and white TV. It
Mhm.
was all gray, black, white. There was no color in my dreams while I was bulimic, which I found really interesting. So there's obviously some issues there. And then, of course, there was that recurring one that kind of seemed to not go away even after my bulimia, which is the one that we talked about, where I was looking for the
Yeah,
fair, and there's this road that keeps going down the same way, and it's like at the end, and I take a left. Now,
yeah.
interesting thing, a little bit of it came back again recently, and I don't know why, but it's that street. So I have to go back and remember what you told me about that road with my friends that I go down and take a left. It's not as dark and dreary. It's not end of the world thing like it was in the first, but that route is still there. And
Gotcha.
I've only had it a couple of times since, and just recently, but interesting that there are recurring dreams, right? So let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that. And how can the mind, like, I know that you're not a scientist, but would it make sense that my dreams would not be in color during that period of my life?
Very well could. Oh, there's so many great things there. So the more you were talking, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to that, but I want to get to this first. And okay, that underlies that. So some of my brain starts going in different directions. Very interesting. The root of the word science. It is actually from an older word, ciens, ciens, and it meant cause or motivation. So a scientist, or it became science, the study of what causes things, developed over. So there's actually like a meaning to that word. I think, small s scientist is the human condition, from little babies learning to operate our own bodies and navigate the environment. We're doing science our entire life. And we do it better or worse. And so people would say, okay, well, if you're doing it right, that's real science, capital S. Fair enough. Then we got the scientific method, and we learn to tell the difference between, well, that's wishful thinking, or that's a poor sample, or that's the experiment didn't measure the variable you thought it did. So we've been refining our technique over time, but a lot of that goes back just to the I think it was Aristotle's natural philosophy 2,000 years ago. And some people want to say, oh, science has nothing to do with philosophy. I'm like, no, it's all philosophy. If you ask any why question, why does that happen? How does that work? It's all philosophy. And then a subset, science, the how of the natural world. Long story short on that one. Oh,
No,
okay. Okay. So I'm maybe if I tell you, then you can remember. So science or science, food and how it relates to dreams, and then recurring dreams. So we're working our way up to recurring dreams. This is how my brain works. I got to go back, and it's anyway.
beautiful. Love it.
Yeah. As long as I got things to say, and you don't have to carry the weight, right? Food has always been intimately related to dreams. And because it is foundational to the function of the body in general. So once upon a time, they used to believe, it was the common popular belief, bad dreams, say, came from a indigestion of rotten food or certain foods that you particularly were sensitive to. And that was considered the only cause. This was back during the days of the humors of the blood. It caused humors to vapors to rise from the stomach and get into the brain and cause us to think things. It's a very interesting thing that a lot of these theoretical approaches, this kind of this is what made me think of it, is that was early science in a way. We had the humors in the blood. You were sanguine or phlegmatic, or etc. And actually, according to and that feeds into early conceptions of racial stereotypes in a way, like this person or phenotype. Phrenology type of thing, measuring the head, and that was accepted science at one point too. If a man has small beady eyes and a nose that's too short, or has ruddy red cheeks, or has yellow hair versus red hair, they used to believe these all meant certain things about their character, their personality. They were more likely to be meek, or they were more likely to be a liar, all these different things. This is a very, I wouldn't get these books and go, oh, the wizard believes these are absolute fact. No, these are historical documents showing the evolution of dream interpretation, and sometimes they contain things that are absolutely not politically correct by today's standards, because they go back to the 1700s. There's no way 300 years ago people could have known, 400 years ago, how our society was going to evolve and how science was going to change. Long story short on that, food. It is true that going to bed on an empty stomach or a full stomach can influence your dream experience. Also, going to sleep drunk, or as what's his name? Confessions of an English Opium Eater. Can't remember his name. De Quincey. He would have very strange dreams, terrifying nightmares sometimes on opium, and feel like he was stuck in the dream world for centuries as horrible things were shown to him. How much he exaggerated for the salacious effect of the day. The late 1800s or early 1800s, he was, it was early. This was during, I think, the Opium Wars era, and when they were trying to decide, is this a social health crisis? Do we need to shut down these opium dens? How do we deal with it? So there's a good chance he exaggerated some of his experiences. But so there are, there's another guy in another book. This is why I love reading these stories. Now I got out this whole data bank of stories. This guy had an experience where a mosquito was flying around near his head, and he was in that liminal zone, that borderland state, enough to both experience the external physical sensation of hearing the mosquito, and far enough down in sleep where he then had a dream that a giant lobster-like insectoid critter had landed on him and attacked his hand. And when he woke up, the mosquito had landed on his hand and bitten him, and he had a little scratchy welt there. And he theorized that, these physical sensations can intrude upon our sleep, and they get then exaggerated. That tiny little bite was the only thing that broke through, and so it was huge in his sensory experience while unconscious. And it was just a tiny little mosquito bite, not that big, something you wouldn't even pay attention to if you're busy with something else, but when you're asleep, man, it comes right through. Also, physical sensations in the body can inform our dream experience in a way that can alert us to medical conditions. Now, I don't understand this well enough to say, oh, that symbol means this specifically, but historical case, there was someone who came to the doctor complaining of nightmares, and this person, their dream was of desperately driving, sweating, panting horses up a hill, struggling to get up a hill, and he's the driver of this carriage or whatever. And it turns out the guy had a heart condition, and they diagnosed it. Basically, they said, well, let's take that seriously. And that goes back 2,000 years ago again to Galen of Pergamon. He was one of the earliest to suggest dreams can help us to detect medical conditions. And then we use that as a source, use that as like a compass to point us in the direction of what might be the cause. And we can investigate, we can rule it out and say, well, it wasn't that in this case. So, and again, I'm usually very cautious when it comes to, I'm not going to claim I can diagnose your medical condition based on your dreams. Very much not so. But medical conditions, and this is finally, we're getting back up to bulimia and whatnot. Your mental state absolutely does inform your dreams. I mean, that's what dreams are in my estimation. It is processing problems. And typically it's problems from our real life, although sometimes it's theoretical what ifs that are related to those problems, or just because it's entertaining. And, and not all dreams are meaningful in that way. Sometimes they're just, you want to have a fantasy adventure and have some fun with it. And so some of those are not meaningful, other than it was just a nice experience. It's nice that during that episode of sleep, you weren't thinking about any problems. Your life was pretty good. Maybe it was actually a little dull, so you needed some adventures. You gave yourself the fantasy of going somewhere and doing something unique and interesting. All of that was getting us up to, did I get to my third point? I don't even know.
So the emotional side could have been part of the reason why. Obviously there's content too. You're really good with content. This is just an overview of the black and white, the colors. I haven't talked to you about the content, but you did with that other one. We talked about the content. And like I said, after we spoke, I did not have the repeat of it, except for the road. And it's not scary. It's not the end of the world anymore. Right.
Good. Yeah, no. So the black and white thing, just specifically, it is not at all uncommon that people dream in black and white. And most people in their dream experiences, even I think talking to me, don't mention color a lot. And if I thought to ask, they'd probably say, I have no idea. It just registers no impression. That doesn't mean things didn't have a color, or that if you think about it, you might go, I think I've seen that shirt before. It was a green shirt. I can't tell if it was green in this dream, but I would assume it was. Okay, green. But then it is interesting, and I'm not entirely certain why. I'm getting there, maybe eventually. Why a person, okay, let me back that up. It is usually more consistent that if you dream in black and white, you dream in black and white, doesn't change. Or if you have occasional pops of color in your dreams, that seems to be consistent. Or if you dream in full vivid color every time, that seems to be consistent from individual to individual. I don't know what would cause someone to dream in black and white at one point in their life consistently and then switch to color. I don't know that that's an unheard of phenomenon, but I think it's definitely poorly understood. And to say have a
something
given
for you to look into now, because when I was younger, it was color. And then during my period of bulimia, particularly, I think the last, out of 30 years, the last 10 years for sure. And granted, there was a divorce that was included with that last 10 years. Yeah. And then, now it's gone to color again. And in fact, I don't get a lot of nightmares anymore. And in fact, sometimes I get really angry because I wake up before the end of a really good dream and I try to go back to sleep and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's tough too.
I don't get to see the end.
That is interesting. So there may be something about that period of time in your life specific. And this is where I get I get away from the idea that you're ever going to find one symbol that means the same thing for all people in all situations. It's all going to be very unique. So a reasonable proposition about your circumstances, there's something about being bulimic or in that period of your life that kind of sucked the color out of living, or you were trapped in a black and white thinking, or your brain just wasn't able to show you vivid colors because you weren't properly nourished. I mean, there's also that connection too, like putting things into the body changes our lived experience, as well as not putting things into the body, saying, starving ourselves in that way is, or having an unbalanced, unhealthy diet, treating our body poorly in other ways. A lot of these things are gonna show up in their effects upon how other bodily systems work, including our dream experiences.
So to my listeners, part of the reason too that I wanted to bring Benjamin on is because I wanted to find out, I'm sure I'm not the only one that experienced different dreams during the state of bulimia or eating disorders, whichever ones they are. And I know that I spent like 2 hours with Benjamin. We had a great time. And like I said, after understanding my dream, it went away. There was a little portion that came back twice since, and that was like how many months ago? So only twice, but the scary parts are not there. So I really think that there is, if there's anyone who's having recurring dreams or they're disturbed by their dreams, I really do think that they should get a hold of you, because I think that I believe truly and absolutely that was one of the most fascinating things. So I had that dream. Oh my goodness, it had to have been for 20 years recurring. And then, it was one that kept coming back. For sure. I was excited. I was really excited. It really helped me. I'm like, even when the little parts came on, they were not dark, they were colorful. They just moved into a different kind of a story. That road, though, I still don't
For
get,
sure.
but we'll figure that out. I'll have to go back and listen.
Well, for sure too. And that's, I've talked to a lot of people. I try and do multiple interviews a week if I can, because sometimes I go through a dry spell. So several things I want to respond to there. It did take us about, a couple hours to go through these things. And some folks I talked to are like, I'll find them on this service called Podmatch. And they're expecting a 15 minute, half an hour, 45 minutes, or, less than an hour, but cut down from that and edited and, real. And I'm like, I'll do my best. If this is all the time you got, that's fine. But ideally, we got 2-3 hours to talk beforehand, establish a comfort level. I go over my ethical boundaries. I make sure you know what the process is, and that I respect privacy, and that I will never release an episode without permission. We record the whole thing and you change your mind afterwards. It doesn't go out there. No one's done that to me yet, but that's a solid promise to everybody. I can also edit out small things where, like, that was too personal. That might give people, and I might dox myself and tell people where I live. Is take that out. Absolute respect for privacy, and give it time for the process. I've gone as long as 4.5 hours with one person once. Haven't gotten quite that, I've gone about 320 on some of the other ones, 3.5. They're not all that long, but a good 2 hours is minimum for a decent understanding. I do my best when we don't have that kind of time. But if you're going to reach out to me, expect that I'm not going to rush you. I'm in it for the marathon, because dreams take as long as they take to understand. And there's often a lot of questions, and sometimes there's a lot of discrete elements, and you try and tie them together. So that was the first thing, like the time and my process. Wow. No, I had a couple other things. Oh, finally getting around to, what is it? Reoccurring dreams. First, the idea that they would change is, I would say, that's the evidence that something we discussed was meaningful. It was a meaningful understanding of at least some parts of the dream that made it less necessary for your brain to process that idea in that form. So the idea of reoccurring dreams is that, if you have a different dream every night, you're dreaming about different topics. You're having different thoughts in your subconscious mind. And to give my conceptual view, and I just make stuff up. Now, that doesn't mean I think it's false, or I'm literally just pulling it out of my ass, but I don't know that anyone expresses these theories the way I do. So you're taking this with a grain of salt in terms of, I am not a PhD. I've not done research on this. I'm a guy thinking critically and deeply and using experience to try and figure out what's going on. So I'm developing my own theory. And maybe some other people have said this, and I'll find that out when I get to reading. I'm gonna have to get a PubMed subscription. It's gonna be a whole thing. But anyway, my theory is that just as the heart beats, lungs breathe, brain thinks, it never stops thinking. There's always electrical activity. And we know we hook people up to functional MRI machines, and in their sleep, they're having neural activity. Something's happening. And like, oh, dreams. Yes. So what are dreams? I think my theory is that dreams are the experience of what it's really like to have thoughts. That what we experience when we're awake is our conscious mind observing our thoughts, having them. There's this overlap between the two of our conscious mind and our thought process. So we can observe our own thoughts, but the way we actually think seems to be, and I think there is research on this, it is in images, in sensory impressions, in smells, in associated ideas, metaphysical abstractions. And it feels different to experience that when we're filtering it through our conscious mind awake. When our conscious mind is kind of shut off to the degree that it's not actively processing, it's just observing, then that's what we get as a dream. We are watching basically our unfiltered thoughts as they fire around our head. And so we get images and impressions and smells and bizarre things, because they don't have to make sense. They're not actually happening. They just represent ideas. So that's actually, I think, the foundation of why dream interpretation works from a purely scientific, psychological perspective. Is we're just observing our own thoughts. And sometimes we can make sense of them. Sometimes we can say, this works in this way, this connects with that. Oh, that relates to a real life experience. And I was saying earlier, so reoccurring dreams, they represent, in my estimation, an unresolved problem or a concept that you want to understand but don't yet fully apprehend. You're basically trying to figure out what do I do, or what is this thing that I'm trying to understand. So we get in these patterns of we get a dream experience that seems to capture that thought or concern or problem in a specific way, and until it is understood fully or resolved, we go back to that kind of crystallized structure and say, here we are again, looking at the same thing. Let me show it to you. Let me review what I think about it, how I experience it, and try again. We really like obsessing over a thought. And it's very often triggered by real life experiences. You know, I have a thing. Oh, that's like, bam, I have the dream again. So proof is in the pudding. If we did something in our discussion that gave you a better understanding of that problem or concern, it should, and it did, change the nature of the dream. So at the very least, it removed the fear of it. Some other elements changed too. Some of the previously consistent elements are now absent or have been modified.
Yeah, no, the search for the Ferris wheel is gone. And the
Really?
feeling of the end of the earth, because like I told you, it was like the earth was ending, the world was ending. Every time I was looking to evacuate from the city, but I wanted to stop by the Ferris wheel beforehand.
Yeah.
Those parts are gone. Just and it's so brief. Like I think I had it, like I said, I only probably had it twice, but it was so brief. It was just walking down. So just driving down the road. So I have to go back and listen to what you said about driving down the road. So there was something there that I didn't resolve on driving down that road where you had to take a left or a right, and I always go left.
Yeah, and that's very common too. Number one, very common. I started to say, I talked to so many people, I can't remember all the dreams. I don't know what I said. And so it doesn't mean that what I said is necessarily true or the only way to understand it. And it doesn't mean that I got every single element that was necessary to understand. There's probably going to be so many layers there, I can never pick it all apart. But it is, what am I trying to say? It makes me very happy. It's the motivation for doing this that I'm able to, for my own sake, feel good about solving a puzzle. I find the mystery fascinating, and I like challenging myself to understand it. But it's that win-win of I get a fun puzzle to solve, something I'm very excited about, and I get to see a positive result, and that makes me feel good about helping someone. It's like, it just doesn't get any better than that. So I'm so happy to hear back from people that say, we talked and my dreams changed and I feel better. And I don't have such a negative experience in my life anymore. That's kind of the point of psychology. Hey, doc, I got a problem. Let's talk about it. See what we can do. And then hopefully problem solved or less of a problem. And then that's how you know you did something good.
Like I said, it was very dark and eerie and kind of like not quite black and white, but almost there. And now it was color. So that part's good. I just have to figure out why I always go left. Maybe it's telling me I need to take a new direction or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or yeah, it's showing you definitely. And that might describe, what is it? I don't think we did, if I'm remembering now, really get a sense of why that particular road, why it is angled downward, why it hits an intersection where you can't go straight. There's a lake there. It's like, you couldn't even go cross country and off road if you wanted to. There's no driving. It's a lake. You have to.
No, because actually there was buildings and a lake behind the buildings.
Yeah.
So building and then lake. Yeah.
Really a forced choice. You've got to, next time, maybe, okay. So there's all kinds of cool things. So there's lucid dreaming, there's prophetic dreaming, there's psychic connections. A lot of this stuff I don't understand. So when I call myself a wizard, a lot of people think this guy is, this guy's crazy. And number one, yes, but also number two, I believe I am a wizard, which makes me double crazy. But the idea of a wise person speaking hopefully beneficial magic words, helping people to understand cause and effect and foretell the future in a way based on very simple physical principles. You flick a domino and eventually the one at the end of the line will fall over. That's advanced wizardry right there. So I was going somewhere with that. Wizard theories. Oh boy. The road. Yeah. Okay. So yes. Dream programming, but first, lucid dreams and my theoretical approach. I try to stay in my wheelhouse. I don't disbelieve the possibility of prophetic dreams. I've had people tell me personally that there's people I know, someone who lives half a mile from me in that direction. I had a dream. 1 week later, the exact circumstances of that dream happened. Everything visually I saw, the words spoken by other people, and it blew my mind. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. I'm going to put that in the mystery to me category, and I'm not going to tell people. I can tell you which dreams are prophetic and are not. I have no idea. So I said very scientifically, set that aside as something I can't understand. The potential for psychic communication, people appearing in other people's dreams, the dreams of deceased relatives. Did they actually come back to give us a message, or did we just need to have that experience to settle our mind? It's possible. It's possible either way. I don't know. So I'd never tell people that's all crock of shit and hooey and woo-woo, nothing. I say, I don't know what to do with that. So I stick to just the psychological side of things. That was coming to where I just laid it out. Do you remember? Dream programming. Jesus, this is how my brain works. I go over the place. I got stories to tell. Dream programming.
I love it.
So and lucid dreaming. I don't know what to do. It seems like lucid dreaming, if I'm to kind of propose a tentative theory, there seem to be people who get plenty of restful sleep in that liminal borderland state, or at least have enough self-awareness of what they're experiencing to kind of merge observer and subject in the sense of exerting control over their dreams. Now, that's just a description of what seems to be happening. That's not an understanding of, well, here's why it happens. Here's how to make it happen. I'm in several Discord servers where every now and again, I read over people's lucid dreaming experiences. It's fantastic. Again, Mary Arnold Forster, Studies in Dreams. She wrote that book, and that was her studying herself and the subject of dreams as a lucid dreamer, as someone who could fly in her dreams and could exert some manner of control. So fascinating to read her account and to validate that as an experience people have been having for at least 200 years at this point, and much, much longer. There are also theories, finally getting around to my main point, this I think backwards and got to catch up. There is the possibility for dream programming, and there are people who say they can do it, and I believe them. I don't understand it well enough to teach someone. Maybe someday I will, but I want to acknowledge that it does exist. And a lot of that is, so there's two ways to go about it. There was a historical example, again, a person who used to prevent dreaming about a specific subject by specifically focusing on it as he fell asleep. How that worked for him, I don't, right? That seems opposite. You think if you think
I would think of the opposite. If you think about the person, you're going to dream about the person.
Yeah. No. So now this may be an extreme outlier case, but it is cited as an example of, we don't really understand the cause of a specific dream subject well enough, because some people use a different method and get a different result, or use the same method and get a different result. So it does seem to be a thing where if you do focus on events of the day or specific problems, you can kind of induce a dream about it. Again, I don't know how that works. I can't teach someone to do it, but this, and finally getting back way back, why the intersection, why the road, why the left turn? It's possible, I don't know if you can do it and I don't know how to do it, but it's possible that you could self-suggest the idea that the next time you get to that intersection, you don't make a choice. You stand there and you just experience the intersection. What is going on here in the intersection? Because there's something about arriving at that point that makes it necessary to choose a path, and you come to a decision about which path to choose. Yeah. And that sends you in a certain direction. And there's a lot of different understandings of left and right, or turning one way over the other, hitting a crossroads. There's lots of different stuff that's going to be unique to you. But definitely that idea of downhill to a kind of a forced choice. And you just say, this time I'm not making a choice. And hopefully that, if you can carry that in, if it's possible, I don't know if you can, or if us merely talking about it is gonna allow you to do so. But that, if you can, I think that then allows you to kind of dwell in a thought without making a choice, and the nature of the choice itself might become more apparent. I would hope so. So maybe if you have that dream again, you might actually stop because we talked about it and it kind of planted that idea. That's one thing I try to be very careful about too, discussing my process is I make it very clear to people that I have no answers. I have precisely zero answers inside my head. All I've got are possibilities, suggestions. I try to be the brainstorming machine that allows you to look at yourself and consider different ways of understanding things. Sometimes I'm a little more, not forceful about it, but if I see something and it lines up, I might be a little more, I really think there's something here. And even if the person says, I don't see it. And this happened recently, episode 118 coming up pretty soon. Well, coming up soon on my timetable. Now, I don't know when this episode, it may already be out there, but it's episode 118. I had another, I had another interpretive failure. We didn't get a very good grasp on why these specific things were appearing to this guy. And I hope to hear back from him if he has the dream again. It's another recurring dream. They're the most fascinating to the dreamers, I think, that I've talked with too. And I love it too, because if we can, find a theme, then we can change them. But my working theory on the failure is that there might be understandings possible that the dreamer doesn't grasp enough to see it if I shine a light at it. Like they don't recognize it either, or things that are kind of buried on purpose that some people don't want to talk about with anyone. They don't want to see it themselves. So there's kind of that can't see it, don't want to see it. Or there's just, I didn't have, and I think in this episode is a combination, certainly of lack of sight. Well, I'm not going to accuse anyone of hiding, being in denial. It happens, but I don't default to that. But also I was just really tired and I couldn't come up with enough creative angles to view these things from. Sometimes it's I gotta have the brain power for it. This is my second long interview in a day. I try and only do one a day because I try to give everyone 100% of my brain power. And you get to the end of the day, it's like 2, 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, I'm running out of coffee and I'm sorry, I can't give you good suggestions.
That's interesting because we said we're going to have another session. The next one's going to be on handwriting, but I want to have you there with me again, because a lot of what you're talking about is very similar to the handwriting. I cannot predict things as a handwriting analyst. I can give you character traits. I can also help you by changing your handwriting to change those particular character traits that might be causing you issues. And some that are bad are not necessarily bad, depending on the job you're in and so on and so forth. But like you, though, like there's things I can't predict. I can't, but there's some people say, oh, that's not me. And the funny thing is, you're looking at their handwriting, you're going, yeah, like one of the letters is showing full denial. Like,
and here you are denying it. Yeah,
my dad was one. My mother read his handwriting analysis and she goes, Ross, that's just like, he said to me, he goes, that's not me. My mom read it. She goes, Ross, that's exactly like you. That's why you always need a third party there, right?
Sure. No, for sure. And this is interesting too, because this gets down into the science of it in a way. What you've got actually a sample of is me writing as fast as I possibly can to take notes about. So there's 2 possibilities in my mind on that. And it's just analyzing, and you tell me, of course, if I'm anywhere near the mark, horseshoes and hand grenades, that is more true to what I would actually be because I'm less filtered. I am writing as fast as I can, or it distorts it a bit because I'm writing too fast, that what you're not actually getting. If I was sitting and thinking and writing carefully and slowly, like I can make my handwriting very pretty. I can make the letters all the same size, and I can do that intentionally. But so which way do you think it is? Is it a better representation because I went fast and unfiltered, or is it less because I was being wild with my strokes?
No, unintentional is usually really good. But what the funny thing is you'll find even if it's intentional or unintentional writing, so to speak, there's similar characteristics, whether you like it or not.
Yeah,
they're there.
Maybe just exaggerating because I'm going quick.
Yeah, So, but
Okay.
I can still pick out the different things. So like your M's would be the same regardless of whether you're doing slow or fast. So you got
Okay.
accumulative, investigative, whatever. So that in the handwriting will your main characteristics, doesn't matter how you write, whether you write fast, write slow.
Okay.
If you're really trying to write really pretty, yeah, that will distort it because then that's not you. But if you're writing slower or writing faster and you're not trying to make it something you're not, then it will be true to the fact with same characteristics.
I just thought about that, the idea of that pretty writing, that might say something about the motive for writing pretty, if that makes sense. Like the way you form those letters might say, here's the reason I'm trying to present this as something pleasant to look at. Maybe,
Oh,
I don't
that'd be
know.
interesting. I should look into
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So when I do that, so when we come back and do yours,
Sure.
I will be doing that. And we'll talk more too on that podcast. And we'll share that.
Yeah.
As you as my
Just a little
guest.
teaser this
Also
time.
to you know to how it might connect with bulimia, because there's a study I read about on that too. So it's not 100% just like you. That was the other thing. Handwriting that we're going to talk about. And I'll show some of it, but can show health issues, but it's not 100% proven.
Yeah.
There's only one, Parkinson's. It's proven that the change in handwriting shows signs of Parkinson's.
Yeah.
But the other ones, but it does that they have, you know, theories of also like cancer, all these other different health ones. So because I went right to my master's certification and that's where they showed that part. And I'm going, I don't want to do my own handwriting analysis.
Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah.
It scares me.
I'm actually the opposite. Like I wish I was a more vivid and prolific dreamer. Now I'd probably spend a lot of time documenting and analyzing them. Maybe it's better if I don't, but it's a little frustrating to me. It's a weird irony that I just have to accept, that I'm fascinated by dreams. And I say this sometimes, maybe I am fascinated by dreams because I wish I could remember mine more. And so I get to live vicariously a little bit through other people. And they tell me these wonderful adventures. Even the scary ones are like, that's amazing. You know, we watch scary movies sometimes to be thrilled and chilled and frightened. But for your dream specifically, it's nice that it took that feeling of doom and gloom and end of the world and terrifying, frightening. I think that's something that can be very beneficial to analyzing our dreams, is that a lot of times our emotional response to the problem we're considering comes from not understanding it very well. It's that fear of the unknown type of thing. So if you can kind of get a grip on what it is, the need to experience a fearful motivator to understand disappears, because it's like fear, worry, anxiety, pain. All of these things are meant to direct our attention to problems that would not, from an evolutionary point of view, fear, pain, these are your friends. You don't like it when they visit, but they let you know, wow, I stepped on something sharp. My foot is damaged. Maybe I should take the sharp thing out without pain. I don't know if you know or ever heard of this. There are some children born with no pain experience, no pain receptors. And these are the kind of kids that will, they'll break their leg and run around the backyard, and they'll only stop running because their leg doesn't work anymore. But they're laughing and giggling and they're like, Mommy, my leg doesn't work. And they're just fine. No pain experience. And their mom's like, oh my God, screaming, it's a compound bloody fracture. They have and so you look at those cases, they have to, if they make it to adulthood, which a lot of people don't, they have to be extremely careful to rigorously move with intention, carefully, and inspect their body regularly, because they will not know if they have a laceration that's bleeding out and they're going to die. They have to kind of check. Gosh. Yeah, they have to be very careful. No pain response whatsoever. So you actually don't want to live a life. You're not going to live a good life or a very long life without pain. And that goes with psychological pain as well. It directs your attention to things that are a threat, things that are important. Yeah. We call it, there's a funny distinction. What is paranoia? It is basically fear out of proportion to actual danger. If you are afraid because you're being chased by, our ancestors chased by a saber-toothed tiger, it's a good time to be afraid. And if you're not, oh, it's a big cat, you're dead. Because you didn't run, you didn't have that fear response. So that carried over to today, and these things are meant to, so the idea of paranoia is, if you're looking at it objectively and you're like, I shouldn't be this terrified about something, about an elevator, about a spider. And we call these things phobias. That's where psychology comes in to say, let's try and bring the fear and the reality closer together, so you don't have to be out of balance, have this disproportionate response. And a lot of it is just experience and understanding, saying, you know, I'm going to look at this thing, I'm going to handle it. There's a classic thing called exposure therapy, which kind of gets people closer, incrementally, tiny things. First, you think about what makes you unhappy or scared. Then you get near a picture of it. Then you hold the picture in your hand. Then you're in the same room with, say, a spider in a cage way over there. And eventually, can you take one step? That's it. Session over. Come back next week. We'll take 2 steps. And eventually, they've gotten people to play where they've got a, what do you call it? The big ones, the big
Tarantula.
Tarantula. They're holding a tarantula.
Yeah.
They used to have a screaming fit if they even thought about a spider touching them. And now they're holding a tarantula in their hand, gradually, slowly, incrementally over time. We can do that with a lot of things. And a lot of it's just a familiarity and understanding of the thing and what it is, and getting used to it. So recurring dreams, not surprising they would change, and for the better, hopefully, the closer we get to a better understanding of why it needed to happen. What are you considering?
Now, here's another interesting factor to that, because the recurring dream didn't involve my ex-husband, which, I mean, my gosh, it's been 20 years now, which is crazy. But right until we talked about that dream, I did have recurring dreams of him, not just him showing up in a dream. So it wasn't the same situation. Well,
Gotcha.
he's disappeared too. And I kept saying to somebody, I go, how do you stop the person coming into your dreams? But so for some reason, I haven't been dreaming about him at all. Like since you and I got together. But before that, it was so annoying, because like sometimes he loved me, sometimes he hated me, sometimes he says, I want to get back together with you. My daughter said, I said, why do I dream about him? I don't dream about my ex-boyfriend after my marriage I went out with, and he's still my best friend. Don't dream about him, but I keep dreaming. She goes, because you met him when you were young. She went to psychology, and she goes, and the brain is elastic. And she goes, you were with him knew him for 22 years, married him for 15. She goes, that part of your brain muscle is there and it won't go away. And I'm going, I want it to go away. I don't want it to go away.
Yeah.
But seriously, I don't know what triggered that. Maybe that dream had something to do with
Very well
letting
could.
go.
Yeah.
I don't know. But whatever, looking for the Ferris wheel.
Now, did we talked about like the Ferris wheel dream and whatnot, and did we also touch a little bit on the dreams about your ex-husband? I don't remember if we talked about
we
that
did
much.
talk about, I did talk to you about, I did tell you that I had those, but we wanted to focus on the recurring dream. But I said that, we talked about that I don't understand it. And I mean, it was like almost 20 years and the guy was still popping into my dreams, and it was really annoying because I didn't want him there. I'm gonna have to go back on that, because you might have actually mentioned something on that as well. Because seriously, I've not.
Maybe I offered a perspective that did some good. I don't know. I never know. I'm doing a lot of this intuitively. I have no idea what I'm doing. You didn't expect me to.
I'm just excited that he's not coming back. He's
sure.
Gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's sometimes a simple conversation can have tremendous impact. Now, it's again, I can't predict that too. Like I said, I go intuitively off of stuff. So I keep threatening to write a book about, the Wizard's Guide to Dream Interpretation as soon as I understand what the hell I do. I'm not entirely certain.
But what would be interesting though is to do like the case studies of like the dream interpretation that you and I did, and then the after, and find out the other people that you did dream interpretations and what was the results of that. Like, I would love to see a book like that, because I know they're all up on YouTube, but what happened after? That would be cool.
Absolutely. And I think hopefully all of my experience here, well, definitely, I believe all of it will, but hopefully I'll utilize it well in formulating that theory. It takes me a long time to think my way through things. So I tell folks, I've got a late adult diagnosis of Asperger's. I've been autistic all my life, and I just thought I was weird. And I'm like, no, I'm actually, kind of Aspie. Fair enough. And it all makes sense now. I'm like, oh, no wonder.
I find you totally normal. That's in my case, because I think
fair enough.
I like people who are what society we might say are different or whatever, but
Quirky.
to me, that's
Eccentric.
what we're all about. It's a colorful rainbow of beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, please, because we were talking about rescue animals and we're talking
Yes.
about your work, and we were saying how, because I have them too, and they cost more pretty well on care than we do like food and everything.
For sure.
So you have books for sale, and I also want people to know where to find you on your the podcast, because they are fascinating. So if you can please share that with our audience.
Absolutely. So the one-stop shop for everything is just benjaminthedreamwizard.com. You can get links to the YouTube channel where I have the videos, links to the books for sale through Amazon. It's all self-published. So, you buy a book for $10, I get $2. They're not a huge markup on those. I want you to get a decent product. I get a few shekels on the back end, and both of us can be happy about a good transaction. There's MP3 downloadable audio versions of all 100 and some odd episodes so far, as well as I've got a growing encyclopedia now. Like, I've been doing footnotes. A lot of these things, 180, 350 footnotes. Now, the author had a few, maybe 50, 60 of them. I added like 300 more because there's a lot of things, psychology terms, historical figures. And actually, I've got a master list that's some 15, 20 pages long in my Word document that is just alphabetical listings of all these people, historical figures in dreams and in just general history. People don't know about Napoleon Bonaparte, that he had a very famous dream that is documented in many books. So every time I find a reference to that, I throw in, well, here's Napoleon and here's the other book he was talked about in, try and reference books to each other. Like, if you want to learn more about that, read this one, also by me, by the way. So anyway, long story short on that, benjaminthedreamwizard.com, one-stop shopping, but literally shopping for everything. I got a merch store with it. Pick up a t-shirt, coffee mug, get a pillow with my little moon silhouette on it. Well, why not?
Okay, and I'm going to ask you this, but on there too, I would probably also say, like little GoFundMe. Don't do GoFundMe, but if you want to support the show,
yeah,
and the money goes to your rescues. I mean, you were saying you got so many of them. That would be beautiful. Just make a note of that too. That
sure.
Supporting the show supports my rescues, because I love that. Like I said, I have rescues, and when you told me how many you have, and telling me about, the one that comes up and he's like, you pet his head and he's okay with that, but then runs away. You feed them,
yeah.
You take care of them. So listeners, when you go on the site, by then, hopefully Benjamin will have that link. If you're a dog lover, please
For sure.
do, a cat lover, any kind. I bet you anything. You have all sorts of other animals that you rescue. Please do help with that. I'm a firm believer in that.
There is also an About Me page that has links to everything on it as well, including, like Cash App, PayPal, if people want to just throw me a few bucks. I have a locals, benjaminthedreamwizard.locals.com. It's a locals community connected to Rumble. I mean, I'm on Rumble and BitChute and Odyssey. I put all the videos out there everywhere, but hoping to build a community on locals. And, if people have a subscription, for $1 a month or something, if I get 1,000 people there, I'm set. Cats are fed. I can keep the heat on, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Really appreciate your time. I absolutely loved our time together before. I'm so happy you came today. And like I said, listeners, if any of you out there, whether you're bulimic or you're listening to this and have an eating disorder, and you do experience, or you feel that you've experienced a change in dreams, please reach out to Benjamin. Like, seriously, it really helped me. It was post, but he helped me also look at why previously might have been an issue. So thanks again for being a guest. And we'll see you again when we do the handwriting one.
Definitely looking forward to it. Good to be here.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.